Welcome, everybody, to the Soapbox Hero. I am so excited about my guest today. I have New York Times bestselling author Susan Verde, who has written books like I Am Human, I Am Love, I Am Yoga, and my personal favorite, I Am Peace. That book is incredible. Susan, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me on. Really, thank you so much. I'm honored.
So I wanted to open today with an honest question of how are you? How are you and your family doing during this very turbulent time?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster and kind of continues to be that way. I have three teenagers, and I'm a single mother, and it's been just the pandemic itself has been difficult, challenging. And we've had many conversations about the state of the world. There's been a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental health issues that we've had to kind of grapple with for myself, for my kids. And so that has been, it's been challenging. I think we're learning a lot about ourselves in the process. First of all, how we relate to each other,
Hmm.
because I actually started on the lighter side documenting my son's piles of dirty dishes because I just thought, let's just turn them into art. I'll take beautiful photos of these disgusting piles of dishes when you emerge from your room. And teenagers are interesting animals because they're not, they're at a place in their lives when they're supposed to be separating from their parents. And then all of a sudden they're just in your face
Hmm.
24/7. And it's they're not really built for that. So that's been a challenge. Health wise, knock on wood, we've been all okay so far.
That's good to
Um,
hear.
Taking all the precautions, not really going anywhere when we have to, the masks, doing, following all the guidelines. Um, and then with all of the latest stuff happening in the world, that's, been more conversation, just trying to sort of check in with ourselves and how we're relating to others. And then, I know for me, I am constantly trying to work on myself, understanding that I am human, so I'm a work in progress. So at this particular time, I have to take, notice of my mistakes, my part in the problem, and then how I can move forward to really take action and not just be, performative, but really do something with it. So that was a long answer to your question, but I would say it's been challenging, interesting, enlightening, scary. The whole gamut, the
Yeah,
whole thing.
I agree. It has been all of those things for me as well. I want to touch on what you talked about as your work in progress as a human. I think it's beautiful that you pointed this out because I was talking about this with a friend recently that this pandemic, while obviously not a great thing, there's a lot of people that are suffering during this time, but it is an opportunity for a lot of us to look inside of ourselves and look at what our lives were, what was I doing before,
Right.
and who was I before the pandemic, and do I want to continue being that person? Do I want to continue going in that direction? Do I want to work 50 hours a week, or do I want to spend more time with my family, or spend more time doing a hobby, or whatever the thing is that they decide maybe they want to change or adjust. I think that I'm glad to hear you bring that up because I think it was that opportunity, hopefully, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope so. And it's, thinking about sort of what do I really need? What do I really need to consume? What do I really need to have? Um, how do I learn? I've been sort of paying attention, obviously, to my kids and noticing, okay, which ones are thriving with the distance learning and which one I have to sort of prop her up and keep her afloat.
Hmm.
It's definitely a constant kind of figuring it out. And I will be very honest, the first maybe 2, 3 weeks of the shutdown, the, stay inside, shelter in place, my tools that I talk about and practice and go to, they were gone. I was not handling it very well. I was completely anxious and overwhelmed and scared. I wasn't very present for the kids or myself. But then, there came a point where it was like, okay, this is the situation. These are the tools I know I have. And how am I going to, I can't stay in this sort of fetal position forever. I have to kind of move forward.
Right.
So let's go there. But like so many others, it was just, I didn't handle it so well in the beginning.
Yeah,
It was tough.
it was scary, right? I mean, it went really really quickly from, hey, there's this thing, we're not really sure what's going on, to you can't leave your home. You need to not go into the stores. You need to try not to leave your house at all. Don't You can't engage with people. You can't socialize, no groups, no friends, no human interaction other than what happens to be in your home, and not everybody has other humans in their home. Um, so yeah, I think for a lot of people it was very scary, in the beginning for sure.
Yeah. And then you get to this place where you start to think about, all the things that you're kind of grateful for, right? I have a home, I have food, I have company, albeit
Hmm.
teenage company, but still company. And, then you begin to think of all the others out there, people with no access to Wi-Fi. So how are they learning? How are they on no computers, no
Hmm.
food, no shelter, no company, there, all the other things. And it's hard then to take action when you're not allowed to mobilize, right?
Right.
So, okay, if you have the means, you can donate, or I mean, it's very challenging. So you're in this sort of strange position of wanting to help and not knowing where, and continuing to remind yourself to be grateful and balancing your anxiety. So yeah, it's a lot of inner work, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to maybe some more happier subjects than the crisis we've all been living for the past few months. Um, so you are an amazing author. That's no secret. Um, do you remember what the first thing was that you wrote? I imagine you started writing when you were young. I'm sure you wrote a few things growing up. Do you remember what the first thing that really stands out to you that you wrote?
I think, yes. So the first thing that really stands out to me, I wrote little poems and stories. And at that point, I also liked to draw a lot when I
Hmm.
was really little. And so there was all of that going on. But I think I was very shy in school. I didn't like to raise my hand. I didn't really want to be noticed. And um, the thing that really stands out to me was actually in ninth grade. So I started writing in middle school for the school poetry magazine, and so I wrote some stuff that got published in there
Hmm.
or whatever. But in ninth grade, we were given a creative writing assignment, and we were allowed to kind of just say whatever we wanted. And I remember I wrote this piece, and there was some swearing in it, and there was some stuff in it, that I was like, ah. And I had this incredible teacher who pulled my piece out and read it out loud to the class. And something about that opened me up. It allowed me to feel, seen and heard, and like maybe I had something to say.
Mm.
So it kind of it really changed everything in that moment. And it was just sort of a reflective piece about. I grew up in the West Village in Manhattan, and we spent a lot of time sitting on our stoop and engaging with the neighbors and sitting under the sky and talking and all of that. And the piece was about that. It was sort of about that moment in time for me in that particular place. So yeah, that's the piece that stands out to me. But then
Mm.
from there, my life took all kinds of weird turns until I got back to the writing part.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's funny when you trace back, you look back at your life and the different turns, and it could all come down to something as simple as one person choosing what you wrote, and displaying it to your peers without really your permission. They just decided
Yeah,
to do it, and it really helped you. It was really, moving for you. I think that's for a lot of, like, everyone's lives. If you do that, you can trace it back, and it's just those little moments that you've got to hold on to. When you're living in them, you don't feel it, but you look back, you're like, wow, that moment was so
right.
important.
That was a pivotal moment. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I think now more than ever is a great time for people to get into your books. That's why I'm very excited to have you and to talk about these books and hopefully increase the amount of people reading the words on those pages, because the idea of mindfulness and love and humanity, um, I think the country especially, but the world is in dire need of more of it. So I want to thank you for writing them, and you have a new book coming out in September called I
Yes.
Am One.
Yes. And I mean, who knew what the world would be like? But it's I Am One, a book of action. And it was really, the inspiration came from, there's that Dalai Lama quote that I'm not going to be able to quote exactly, but about dropping a pebble in the ocean, and
Mhm.
it has far reaching effects, right? And I sort of was thinking about that idea that it really, because I want, when kids read that book, I want them to know that they can make a difference, like not to be stopped by the fear that they're just one person and what can I do, right? How am I going to make a difference? I'm just one. But the most beautiful, wonderful everything started with just one. Like that pebble in the ocean, like a beautiful garden, it's one seed. Like any movement, it's one idea, and then others follow. So I wanted to really sort of let the reader know that one is enough to make things happen.
Wow, that's
I
really beautiful.
hope it, I hope it does all that. But
Yeah,
I am excited for it. And of course, working with my illustrator, Peter Reynolds, he's just, I mean, if you've seen some of his own books that he's written and illustrated, I mean, he's just an incredible human. So um, to continue to work with him has been a true honor for me.
yeah. That I'm very much looking forward to reading that book. That's the exact, almost the what encapsulates what this podcast is supposed to be about. Of I think most people want change. Most people want things to be different in their world, but they don't know what to do or where to go or how to start. Or most people think, well, I'm just me. Who cares what I have to say? Or and I go through that. I
Yeah,
mean,
of course.
starting a podcast. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of them. Why would my ideas or my words be any more important than anybody else's? And we all go through those thoughts, but it does start with you. I mean, if not you, then who?
Right,
And if
right.
and so I again, another book that I think is exactly what we need as a people, as a society.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I feel sometimes, well, most of it, all the time, when I'm writing, that I'm really kind of, I'm as much as it's for everyone else, it's for me as well, because I have those thoughts in my head also, the ones that tell me I'm not enough, or how am I going to make a difference, or there's so many incredible, which there are, children's books in the world, how is this one going to
Right.
really be meaningful for someone?
Hmm.
And so these are things that I also have to, conversations I have to have with myself as I continue to go forward. Yeah, so it's not a subject that I'm far removed from.
Right. Right. Yeah, so I think it's great. I really do. I want I want to just gonna praise you the whole podcast, tell you how great you are, just the whole
No,
time.
oh, please.
Um,
Again, referring to my teenagers, it's very refreshing, let me tell you. Mom is not, we don't get that kind of,
no, not,
yeah,
not always a fan club. Not always
yeah,
a fan club. It took me many years after leaving the nest to appreciate what my mom was and what she had done. As a teenage boy, I was certainly not
yeah.
not as
That's
appreciative
the
as I
love
should have.
it, right, of course. No,
What do
I
you
get,
know? You don't know what you're talking
oh,
about.
I know nothing,
Yeah,
nothing.
absolutely. One of the callbacks, and I give her credit for this all the time, was she used to lecture me all the time about be careful who you surround yourself with. Who the company you keep is really important. And it didn't make any sense to me as a kid, because all that matters to me as a kid was what is my image? What do people think of me? What, like, am I fitting in? Am I going with the flow? That's what mattered. I wasn't thinking about, well, what kind of energy am I surrounding myself with, and what direction are the people that I'm surrounded by going? And I'm going to end up going with them, or I'm going to end up matching their energy. And that can be a really bad thing if you choose the wrong company, which as a young man I did.
I mean, I listen, as much as mothers have incredible advice, which we do, you have to go through your own thing. I mean,
Yep.
I think I try to remember that when when I'm doling out that kind of, wisdom or whatever it is. And I mean it, and I hope they pick up on it. But at the same time, I know there's a piece of them that's just going to go their own way and have to figure out their own situation and energy. I have to say, I feel like they're definitely a lot more worldly and savvy than I was at that age. These kids have a real sense of connection and justice and things like that. So I at least it makes me incredibly hopeful, even if they're not really pushing that in my direction. I see them with each
Hmm.
other. So there's that.
Yeah, and it's it's all about getting that momentum to turn into a new direction. And the the seems like the younger generations, the younger we go, the more they're feeling that turn of, okay, this isn't what we want to be doing, this isn't what we want to be seeing. There needs to be change. And even before the pandemic, especially, I could feel the energy shift a little bit, that more people were like, okay, hold on, we need to have more discussions about what's happening in our world, and who's benefiting and who's suffering. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of people suffering and not a whole lot of people benefiting, and that needs to change. And then, flash forward past the pandemic, and then these, equality and justice marches and protests, and the way those are being handled. um, there's a lot of things being shown to us, and we get to decide what we do with what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And I hope that this shift is going to, change the light on some of these issues.
And so I really do. I feel like, people are acting. So hopefully it's moving in that direction. I feel like it is. So I have some hope there.
Yeah, absolutely. So now my favorite part of every podcast, my little patented question. It's not patented, but please, I mean, actually, everybody take it. If every podcaster wants to ask it, I think it's a question that more people need to be asking themselves and asking each other. So it's not mine; it's ours. So please, don't feel like you can't also ask this question. So the thought experiment goes: tomorrow morning, you wake up and you check your bank account, and you have hundreds of billions of dollars, more zeros than any one person should ever see in their bank account. And then you're like, okay, you call the bank, and they're like, nope, everything is legit. It's your money, not a mistake. Go nuts. You're like, well, that's really weird. Let me hop online and see if this has happened somewhere else. And you find you have hundreds of millions of followers, essentially limitless power and influence over the masses. Um, what do you do 6 months later, after you pay off the house or fix the roof, or whatever it is that you've been putting off because there's never enough to do all the things that you want to do? After you make sure your kids are taken care of, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, what for you, what do you put that money and that power and that influence toward?
Well, since I have so much money and I would then have the freedom to do multiple things, because I don't feel like there's just one thing, although I do feel like for me, there's sort of maybe one umbrella, one aim, one goal of spending all this money. I would certainly focus on children mostly, although, again, so many things you can do. Um, but I think that it's really important that overall, every child has enough to survive, feels they are enough to be in the world and make a difference and feel valued, right? And so all of the the things that they go through. I would work on education for sure. Um, I have two children with some learning issues, and I feel as though, as much as teachers are my people, because I also was a teacher, I feel as though sometimes that teachers are not given the opportunity to teach children in the way that they learn, right? To acknowledge
Right.
their various learning styles, or abilities, where they want to go, where their interests lie, what makes them a learner. Um, and so I would really focus on revamping like the entire education system. There's all this research about mindfulness, about the amount of sleep kids need, about how much they can be still and hold their bodies still, on top of their various interests and things like that. So I would definitely revamp that system. Um, I would invest in, or maybe start my own foundation for mental health issues. Still too much of a stigma, and people worry about talking about mental illness or taking care of their own mental illness or having access to things that might help them. So I would definitely work on that. Again, thinking about my children, my own life, my family, my history, there's been a lot of mental illness, and I feel like it wasn't always addressed, or it was, hidden.
Right.
So,
So hush, hush. A
right.
lot of
So
people are
I would just
made to be
work,
embarrassed for their mental illnesses.
which is just, that's the
Right.
crazy part,
When
right?
most of us are suffering, most of people are suffering in some way or another.
Absolutely. And the more we can talk about it, and put our minds and our money into helping, and supporting and really working on real actionable ways people can get help. I will tell you that where I live now, is the eastern end of Long Island, and I have a child with OCD, and we exhausted every therapist available out here. None of them were the right one, the right anything. And so we had to go back into Manhattan. It's only a couple of hours away, but still a child who's in school and has to be pulled out.
Right.
And, so the right therapies are not available. I mean, I think of these very sort of rural areas that have no access to mental health, doctors and treatments and things like that. So I would definitely throw a ton of money in that direction and really, really be on the ground working in that area. And then, of course, there's things like hunger and homelessness. I think I would just want everyone to sort of, I'm a yogi, so I think about all the chakras. I don't know if you know all,
I,
but the different
I'm loosely aware. I don't have all of them memorized, but I know what they are.
of energy. It's sort of the different areas where we hold on to trauma or things we have to work through.
Right.
And so, the root chakra is sort of that very basic, I guess if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever, it's the very basic safety,
Hmm.
a home, a loving parent or caregiver, or, a roof over your head, food in your mouth, something like that. So taking care of those very basic needs for those who don't have them, so that then they can grow and blossom and go out into the world and make a difference. I think those are, the areas that I would really focus on, but certainly it would be under this big umbrella of every child feeling like they have a chance, that they are enough, that they are getting enough, and that they have an equal opportunity to move forward in the world.
Yeah, again, that's beautiful. Mental health is a topic that I bring up on this podcast pretty much every episode. I think it's not doing anybody any favors to have some social stigma around, or that it's a negative thing to have a mental illness or to suffer in any way mentally. It's out of your control. It's not anything you've done. So there's no reason, and especially when all of your peers, when you walk into a grocery store, everyone pushing a cart is dealing with their own things, and you're not alone. Everyone in that store is suffering. Everyone in one way or another is having a hard time. Life is not easy for very many people. Even the ultra rich and famous, it's not easy for them either. They all have their own set of issues and struggles that they're dealing with. And until we can come together as a society, as a large community, and start talking openly and truly being honest about what it is, and work on preventing it rather than just treating the symptoms or mellowing the symptoms,
Right.
figure out why is it happening and what do we need to do differently so that it doesn't happen to the next generation. Because it seems like the longer we go, the worse things get. I mean,
Right.
between allergies, between mental illness, between I mean, there's just so many things that we don't seem to be moving in a better direction.
No, and I think so many things are interconnected, right? So there's your mental health, but then what kind of food are you eating, and
Right.
then what neighborhood are you living in where you're being given specific options that are not good for your body or your mind? So then
Hmm.
there's that issue. So, and that's a whole other kind of section. And then what kind of mental health treatments do you have in your community, and what is what kind of acceptance is in your community so that you feel comfortable reaching out, asking for help, talking about it, so that you're not self-medicating or hiding. So there are many, many layers. Movement, what kind of movement are you doing with your body? I mean, there's all these things are so connected to your mental health. And I think we have to look at the whole, a bigger picture, and not just, oh, you have this, so
Hmm.
take this pill.
Right.
And now I'm not certainly not speaking against medication. In some cases, it really helps, and I know that from personal experience. But there has to be this sort of holistic approach to treating mental illness and treating a person as a person, and not just what you've diagnosed them as having.
I agree. And on top of all of those things, there are some people that might not even have the ability to get the health care that they need because they don't fall under the right circumstances or they don't check the right boxes and they go without. And, and they're in your community just like everyone else. This is community is one of the big things I harp on this podcast as well. Is I've done a few episodes with people that represent foster care, nonprofits, and basically child advocacy. And it's one of those things that if you're not adopted or you haven't adopted someone, you probably don't know a whole lot about that world. You just don't have any reason to have been thrust into it. And it's not like it's something everyone talks about, the logistics of what happens from, being a child to being thrown back into society. And the fact is, those people, along with the people that don't get health care, along with the people that didn't get proper education or whatever, all the lists go on, those people that were left behind are still in our communities. And what do we expect them to do if we don't bring them up with us and we don't include them and help them with what things that they need, and we just assume they're going to figure it out on their own? Best of luck to you. I mean,
Right.
those people still live in your community. Their kids go to school with your kids. Like,
Right.
it's we're all together. We are all connected, whether we like that or not. And there's consequences of that, and there's things that go along with us being connected, but we don't really look at things like that person's my neighbor and that's important to me, and I need to make sure that he's okay so that my community can flourish. It's me, what's best for me and mine. And I think that hurts it as well.
I agree. I agree. I mean, everything you're saying, and community is so important. I think that's part of the reason that this pandemic has been so strange and jarring, is that we've physically were pulled out of our community. So then we had to relearn how to either create a new community
Hmm.
or kind of reconnect with our original community. I mean, I've found that some of the people I'm connecting with now are possibly not the people I was connecting with before. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And there is a lot of me, and I mean, I've been guilty of it. I'm not going to say that I
But
never
we
have.
all have, yeah, we all definitely have.
I think that's part of it, is acknowledging when you slip into that and remembering there's a bigger bigger picture.
Absolutely.
To know.
Growth is part of this journey. And if we're not ever recognizing our mistakes, then we don't have the opportunity to grow from them. If we're pretending like we're perfect and there's nothing that needs to change, then what are you doing here? Like what are you doing? If you're perfect and there's nothing that you can do to grow, well then you've done.
That's the point. Right.
You've won.
You're
You've won
saying,
the game. Here's your medal and I guess have a good day, but that's not reality. Everybody has things they can improve on or grow in categories or focus on or something. Everyone has something that they can do, and sometimes it's things like in this most recent protesting and police reform that's being talked about. There's a lot of things where people are looking at, oh, I didn't realize that I had been saying things or thinking this way. And now, after having another, opportunity to look at this, I was wrong. And I'm gonna correct that. And I'm gonna go in a different direction now. And I'm gonna approach this certain thing, whatever it is for each person. I'm gonna go about this a little bit differently now that I've seen how they live, how certain people in this country live every day.
and I think sometimes it's a matter of, sometimes you need someone pointing it out to you. I mean,
Right.
I know I've definitely made some mistakes, and I've had friends say, "Hey, this is not okay. I need you to be doing, ABC or whatever." And I've had to look at myself and say, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. Why would I don't know why I'm so sorry. Here, I'm changing." I mean, the ability to say you're sorry, take a look at yourself, and then take action to change. I think that's key. And I agree with you. There is no perfection. I remember my son was like 4 years old when he came up to me one day and he said, "Why does the word perfect exist, mommy? I don't. There is no such thing." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're brilliant!
You're a
4 years
prodigy.
old. Oh my gosh, who do I call?" But no, it was, and I was like, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, there
Yeah.
is no perfection, no perfection." So it is true. Why does that word even exist? I don't even know what it means really. But yeah, so
Maybe it's something to strive toward, something that we all hope to go for. I don't know. That's
I
really, I'm
don't
going to have to take that one home and chew it. I don't, man, your 4 year old really was brilliant.
it was
That
pretty
one will
cool.
make you think. Wow.
Yeah. It was just
Yeah.
like,
I think that people should be proud of making mistakes and growing from it. Like, I feel like for me, I'm open about it. I'll post about it. I'll put it out there to the public. Look, this happened. And in fact, there was one episode that I did where I used a word that there's no reason to use that word. It was just something that like I had been carrying since I was a kid. And growing up, you say words that you probably shouldn't say for those kinds of, it's a lazy word is what it is. It's, well, I'll just say that instead of finding a word that really describes what it
right.
is that I'm talking about. And I said it, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I stopped the podcast and I was like, why did I use that word? Like, I don't mean that. I know that that word is sensitive for some people and that it's not appropriate to use. And I apologize to my audience. I was like, look, I'm really sorry that I said that. And I'm going to work on that. And I'm going to make sure that there isn't another episode that has that. And I think that that is far better a use of that than being shaming it or hiding it or making excuses. Well, I didn't mean that, or I was sarcastic or whatever. No, you probably meant it and you were wrong for it, but grow. You can grow as a person. It's not
Yeah.
too late, no matter how old you are, no matter what your circumstances are. Every day you wake up, you have to make decisions. Every day you decide to grab a drink of water, you decide to grab the fork, like you choose to do that. You can choose something different for yourself any day you want.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's okay to be uncomfortable, as difficult as it is. I've definitely found myself feeling regretful, uncomfortable, but then committing to, okay, how am I going to go about this differently? And keep going, and be open to somebody else's suggestion or opinion or assessment of what you are doing, or how you can change your behavior in a more positive direction. I just think, like you said, it's community, it's communication, it's openness, it's a willingness to fall down and be uncomfortable and get hurt and then get back up again and do something different.
Absolutely. I think that's what this is. I think that's what we're doing here. We're supposed to be learning. We're supposed to be growing. We're supposed to be trying things and putting ourselves out there and finding passion and chasing it and not letting go of it, finding purpose and love and not chasing the dollar. The dollar is not everything. That is not what we're doing here. I don't believe that's what we're doing here.
No, I agree. I agree. This is a journey, right? And it's not always easy and it's not always comfortable, um, but it's growth, it's movement without
And it's
perfection.
beautiful.
It
And
is.
it's beautiful.
And
Every moment, even the bad moments where I mean, they're going to give me a hard time about this, but like there are days when like I'm sitting in the yard and I'm like, this reality, this thing, whatever this is, it really is beautiful. The amount of things that have to work together in order to create what we're living in is incredibly beautiful. It is so precise and it is so harmonious. I mean, it everything works together, and we're not working together. We're right now the only
oh,
things on this planet that are doing we're kind of doing our own thing. We don't feel like working with everybody else, but from the rain to the wind to the dirt, the soil, everything.
I mean, and maybe it does sound cliche, but there, you forget, you get busy, you do whatever, and I think this being in place, this being at home, and one of the things I'm incredibly grateful for is the fact that I can walk outside and there's nature. But even if I were still in the city, there's the sky. The birds
Hmm.
are so loud right now. Have you noticed that? Because we're not
Hmm.
out there
Right.
interfering. They're like, hey, hey, we've got this place to ourselves. We're going to talk. But yeah, I agree with you. Sometimes I am looking at the sky or I'm looking at the moon sort of floating in the sky, and
Yeah.
I'm like, how did that happen? This is sort of miraculous how it all, like, how we're able to not fly off the earth and fall somewhere else in the universe, and how the trees talk to each other and the leaves are so, perfect the way perfect, I guess, perfectly imperfect the way they are. So yeah, it's very cool to be able to stop and think about that.
Yeah.
And
I
right, we're
agree
the ones who are
completely.
not working. Yeah, we're the ones who need to figure it out.
Yeah, at least get closer. I mean, at least try to be a little more synchronized with what the planet is doing and the direction that it's going. Um, any improvement I would take at this point. I just want things to go in a better direction than we have been. And any the smallest victory is still a victory. And you put together 100 small victories, and you've got a pretty big victory there.
It just takes one and then one and then one and then one. Yep,
That's right.
definitely. Definitely. And I think we have to take a look at ourselves. We have to take a look at the representation that's out there and then try and change that and further that along. And, we've all got to kind of work
And
as this community.
our contributions as well. What things, what businesses, what agendas are you supporting with your spending of money? Are you spending money in your local community, or are you buying everything online and supporting the two titans of retail industry, or are you supporting your neighbors, your community members, the people who are trying to bring you what you need and also make a living?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's been, sort of the wonderful thing and the terrible thing at the same time. But the ability to support your community, to support our local farmers and the restaurants and all, in the beginning, I think there was so much fear and unknown, and we didn't want to touch anything, and every package was scary, and I remember there were days in the beginning when I would, be wiping everything off and cleaning everything up, and then I'd take a shower, and then UPS would arrive, and I was like, no, I'm not doing it. But then there started to, then the local restaurants and the grocery stores and the whatever. And it was like, okay, I'm going to follow the guidelines and wear my mask and do the things and support my people, because otherwise it'll all shut down. And then what?
It'll
You
go
know,
away. It
and
won't be there when we come back.
No, and people need to make a living, and they need to feed their families, and they, one of the communities that I was so impressed with, even though I talked about revamping the education system, were teachers. All of a sudden,
Absolutely.
schools are shut down, and every teacher got online, figured it out, continued a curriculum, even while they had their own families, their own anxiety, their
Yep.
own cases of the virus. They continued on. And whenever one of my kids would be like, I don't want to do this time, why can't they stop giving me all this work? I would say, there is a human on the other end of that who is doing
Hmm.
this for you to keep things going, and they have their own stuff to deal with, and yet they're there. So, I mean, that community, the kidlit community, there were communities that suddenly appeared and came together and did readings and shared books. And, we all kind of tried to rise to the occasion as much as we could, even in the face of our own sort of, anxiety and terror and fear of all the unknown.
Absolutely. I agree completely. First, I agree that yes, the education system is wrong. We need to take a whole new look at it. Um, and before I give you my take on what the education system should be, I want to state that it has absolutely no fault of the educators. The teachers are amazing, amazing people who are deciding. Same as a nurse, they're saying, look, I'm going to dedicate myself to helping all these people. All of these kids need to learn. They need this information, and somebody needs to give it to them. And I think most of the problems are coming from much higher in the
Yes.
system than in any individual teacher. I mean, the budgets have been slashed year after year after year to the point
The
where they're
salaries,
buying their own supplies.
oh,
I
it's
mean,
ridiculous.
it's
It's ridiculous what teachers.
unbelievable.
So I was a nursery school and then a kindergarten teacher for over 10 years. And, I remember every kid. And those kids, I don't remember every parent's name, but I remember every kid. And those kids become your kids. And so when there's something scary going on in the world, I think the teacher instinct is like, I've got to keep it normal. I've got to,
Mhm.
keep them focused on this so that the rest doesn't get too overwhelming. And yeah, you're right. And the amount that teachers get paid and supported is insane. It's insane. It's inexcusable. And yeah, so it's coming from somewhere else. And again, another system that needs revamping.
Absolutely. And this is a soapbox that I love to get on about education. I think one thing we need to be asking ourselves is, why are we putting kids in school? What do we want them to learn? What do we want them to get out of this? We want them, I believe the idea of school is to prepare them for the world, the reality, for life. And we don't really do a good job of that. We're not teaching taxes. We're not teaching people
Oh,
proper
I
spending.
just
We're not
had this
teaching
conversation with somebody. Yes.
we're not teaching nutrition. We're not teaching people proper anything. We're just making them regurgitate the standardization. I
Oh,
think is the root issue. I think the states and even communities should have the control of what they need to teach based on what they need in their community and what they
yes.
need in their individual state. Not everyone has to learn this way, and you have to be able to regurgitate 6 different subjects on one day on one test, because you're not retaining any of that. There's so many studies that
They're
show that these kids, it's impossible to retain that much information. You can't.
And they just spit it back because they need to pass the test and they need to get the grade. And they put all this talk about mental health. They put
Hmm.
all this pressure on themselves because if they're failing or they want to get into college or they're not in the moment, they're thinking, okay, I've got to get into college or my parents are going to kill me or I need to be, the
Hmm.
top of my class or whatever it is. And I absolutely agree. I was just talking to someone about, I wish that they would teach my kids how to balance their bank account, how to
Hmm.
pay taxes, how to save their money, maybe how to invest their money, how to be a functioning human. And then there's the social emotional piece.
Right.
They need to understand how to be a decent human in the world, how whatever their mental stuff going on is okay, how to access help. They need a child can't learn if they're hungry, if they're homeless, if there's trauma going on. So those issues need to be dealt with first before piling on work and having these expectations of, and the texts that they use are so
Hmm.
old, it's the same stuff over and over. And yet there's so many brilliant books out there that they could be using. And again, I agree. I think it's not teachers so much as the higher up, and the way that the system has been set up.
Yeah, I agree completely. I wish we could get some change in there. I don't know how to do that. I want to
Start
find the
fresh.
people that do. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do. We really need like we need what's the right word? Like a reorganization. Like we need like for most big companies, when like about once a year they go in and they say, okay, you're doing two people are doing one job, so we're gonna fix that. We're spending way too much money here. Why does this even exist? No, no, no. We need like a big audit. We need to go through and clean some things up everywhere in every single
We need to make sure that there is equity in every school situation, regardless of the neighborhood or the resources
right.
in that area. The school should have the same thing as the school on the, on the Upper East Side. You know what I mean? The schools should have the same access. Not that they're teaching necessarily the same things,
Right.
as you pointed out, but they should have equal resources, money,
Yes.
funding, access, and if there are kids in their community whose needs are, they need food versus history lessons. Okay, so that money gets allocated for that thing then. Whatever the need is, that's where we need to put the funding. But you're right, it needs to be an entire restructuring, like just a sweeping through of the whole system.
And I
Because we thought you were supposed to be educated 100 years ago is completely
right.
different than what we know now. And there's continual research. I mean, schools that implement these mindfulness programs in lieu of uh, punishment, punitive programs, are finding that they work much better.
Hmm.
There's some teenagers need more sleep. Why are you asking them to get up at 6:30
Right.
a.m. to get to school? They're not going to give you their full attention. So it's so many things that are scientific, and we're still ignoring them.
Well, and not only how early you making them wake up, but then you've got extracurriculars, and then you've got homework, and then you have social life, family time. Like, yeah, one of the things that I do, I coach club volleyball. I grew up in Southern California playing volleyball. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I've been coaching for 6 years now. And my athletes, I watch them because my athletes are college bound. They're getting scouted. We're going to national tournaments. We're going to Dallas and Florida, and we're going to all these different places where there's tens of thousands of people. I mean, we're not doing it now thanks to the pandemic. Our season ended this year very early, so unfortunately, we didn't get to do any of that. But normally, we would be in the presence of every major college, every Ivy League school, every D1 college is there. And these are 14, 15-year-old girls that are going to school and taking tests and doing other extracurriculars. I mean, they are exhausted. They are exhausted.
Yeah, and at that age, again, their friends, their social life is so important. This is how they're
Hmm.
working out problems. This is how they're growing. This is how they're separating and becoming individuals. And when they're expected to, and they're doing something they love with volleyball,
Right.
right? They're in it. My son actually, one of my sons goes to boarding school in Florida, and he plays football, which is terrifying. But regardless,
It really is now. Yeah. Oh,
it's
all the
terrifying. So,
studies.
oh my God. And yet I had to give him the opportunity. I felt we were able
Hmm.
to, and he needed to experience. He's small and fast, so he's not going to the NFL, but he's getting, which is okay with me. But he's
Right.
getting. I think for him, it's all about the team,
Yeah.
teamwork and all that. But anyway, he's at this school, and so half the day, he gets up, they lift, they train, they do this, and then they go to school, and for the second half of the day, and then by the time they get back to their room and they have homework and they have whatever it is, They're exhausted.
Yeah.
They're exhausted. But they're doing, like with volleyball, with football, they're doing something they love, so they're in it. That part is the good stuff,
Right.
right? The other
There should
stuff
be
is
more of that. That should be the
right.
focus, right? Like, let's give
Oh,
them the good stuff. Like right now, we're treating them like basically like adults. Like, look, you're basically already an adult. Start planning your life. You need to start getting ready for college. You need to get ready for a family. You're going to be working here. And what kind of job do you want? That is not the most important thing for a child to be worrying about when they're
no.
12, 15, whatever. I mean, any age, they're supposed to be living and, I mean, absorbing and not stressing. There's so
Right.
much stress on
There's
these
so
young
much.
kids.
It's too much. It's just too much, you know? And then throw in the state of the world,
Right. Absolutely.
right? Which they are, because they are an amazing generation of kids. It's important to them. So they're required to take care of that too. And we're looking to them. So we've added that on there. We're handing them this mess that they then have to kind of deal with and wade through. And so yeah, it's too much. It's too much. I agree. I agree. Sometimes I so believe in mental health days, like when there was a normal school life going on, there would just be days when I'm like, you know what? You're not going. Just stay in bed today. Forget it. It's not
Let's go on a
happening.
walk.
Yeah,
Let's go on a
let's
hike. Let's find a cool place
right.
to
Let's
go and
take a
just
drive. Let's take a bike
appreciate
ride.
the day.
Let's something. Let's look at the world around us. Let's forget it. It's okay. Um, yeah. So I agree. It's just the something needs one of many things that needs to be changed, looked at.
Yeah, you put the things together and you beat me to it. I was going to say that all of those things that those kids are dealing with, all the more reason why mental health and the awareness of it and the focus on it is so much more important now, because these kids, this generation that's going to school right now, that's in high school, they're going to need help. They are going through trauma like no one else has ever gone through at a young formative age,
Yeah.
and they more than anyone are going to need help with what they're dealing with and what they're going to be dealing with for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and they really do. And I hope that we continue to keep that in mind, because this is going to be a generation of kids that, like you said, they're going to have PTSD. It's been
Yeah.
incredibly traumatic. Um, yeah. So these are things we all have to kind of keep in mind as we move through it all. It's a
Yeah.
tough one.
I agree. Well, I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. I love that we got to kind of flow a little bit at the end. This was really nice. Do you have anything coming up other than the book coming out in September that you want to tell people about?
Well, I have some. I mean, it feels I sort of have been trying over the last few days and continuing for a little while. I mean, I forever this will be going on, but in terms of
Hmm.
social media and things like that, I've kind of been trying to step back and really listen and learn and sort of figure out my place and what I can do and the mistakes I need to fix and things like that.
Hmm.
But as far as books, and I'm still writing, I'm still making a live trying to make a living and support my family and all of that good stuff. So I've got I think I've got a couple of story times coming up for the latest book that just came out, the in the new fairy tale. There's a new fairy tale series.
Hmm.
It's sort of being called the feel good fairy tales, but they're taking a kind of mindful spin on fairy tales. So more of that kind of thing for a broader audience of kids who might be really into that. So I have
How do you
the
find that?
how do I do what?
How does somebody find that if they wanted to check
Oh,
that out?
you can find that. The first one's called The Three Little Yogis and the Wolf Who Lost His Breath. So as you can imagine, there's a wolf who can no longer huff and puff when he's angry. So we got to figure out some other way to deal with our anger issues. So that can be found. Well, you can go to my website, susanverde.com, and then there's links to where you can buy all the books. You can go to your local independent bookshop, which would be amazing. or you can go to Amazon and find it as well. So I'm doing some virtual story times with that, and that information I'll post on Instagram, which is at Susan Verde, or on my website. And so we're still doing a lot of that. And then we're going to start talking about I Am One, which is in September. The I Am series is not finished. We've got 2 more after that, and a couple more fairy tales coming along.
Any chance you can tell me what the next 2 are going to be?
Well, I can tell you what the next one is, only because the third we haven't picked a title yet. So.
Okay.
But the one after I Am One is called I Am Courage, a book of bravery. I'm super excited about that. So yeah, so all of that is coming down the pipeline, and and then there's some other stuff we're working on that I'm not at liberty to share just yet.
Okay.
But also, I'm if there's anything coming up, I will definitely post about it. Instagram is the best place to find me, although I am on Twitter at Susan Verde and Facebook as well. But I do a lot of, I don't know why, I like the visuals of Instagram. It's really nice. And everything is also on my website again. And I'll be posting some more. I've been doing some meditations for kids and things like that. So just look for me there. But like I said, for the next little while, I'm kind of pulling back a little.
Sure.
I really just want to be more of a good listener and taking action in my home and out in the world that I don't necessarily need to be posting about it. Do you know what I mean? I'd really rather just be doing it.
I understand completely. I feel the same way right now.
Yeah. So that's that. And everybody, if anyone has questions, you can also email me, susan@susanverde.com. I am happy to email people and get emails and all of that. So
awesome. Thank you.
I have to say, I've just really enjoyed the opportunity to kind of free flow and talk about all of this important stuff and just have a nice, a really good connection, community, conversation. It's really an honor to be able to do it. So thanks for having me.
I enjoyed it thoroughly as well. Thank you so much, Susan. I'm so happy to have met you, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and talk to me and my audience.
Thank you. Thanks again.
All right. Well, you take care, and bye, everybody.
Bye.